I take the pleasure of introducing our guest, Mr. Ashok Soota. Welcome, sir. So, Mr. Soota is the Executive Chairman of Happiest Minds Technologies Private Limited, an IT services company which he launched in the year 2011. As we all know, Mr. Soota is widely recognized as one of the pioneering leaders of Indian IT industry. Prior to founding Happiest Minds, he co-founded Mindtree in August 1999. Under his leadership, in a span of 11 years, Mindtree became a global entity with a revenue run rate of $350 million, with over 9,000 people and offices in multiple cities in US, Europe, and Asia. Prior to co-founding Mindtree, Mr. Soota was president of Wipro Infotech from the year 1984 to 1999. Under his leadership, Wipro's IT business grew from $2 million to $500 million. Mr. Soota began his career in 1965 with the Shriram Group of Industries in India. In 1978, he became the CEO of Shriram Refrigeration, a company which was unprofitable for 4 consecutive years. Mr. Soota facilitated a complete turnaround, making it profitable in his first year and taking it to a position of leadership in each of its product lines. He is an industry leader. He was the president of Confederation of Indian Industry, the CII, India's largest industry association, and also the president of Manufacturers Association of Information Technology. He has served on the Prime Minister's Task Force for IT and Advisory Council for World Intellectual Property Organization, Geneva. For his contribution to the IT industry, he was recognized as Electronics Man of the Year in 1992 and IT Man of the Year twice in the years 1994 and 1997. He is the recipient of Professor S.N. Mitra Award from Indian National Academy of Engineering and the Global Peacock Award for Technology Leadership. He has been a member of the Global Board of Trustees of TIE. He has served on the Board of Governors of IIM Kozhikode and was the founding chief patron of Samarthanam Trust for the Disabled. Mr. Soota holds a Bachelor of Engineering from Roorkee University, which is now the IIT Roorkee, and an MBA from the Asian Institute of Management, Philippines. I thank Mr. Soota for taking some time from his busy schedule and accepting this invitation. Welcome, sir. He will be talking about IT careers, a lifelong adventure of opportunities and self-discovery.
Good morning, and it's a real pleasure for me to be here. Thank you, Manasa, for that introduction, and Professor, thank you for those over-generous comments. And the one thing I really don't think I could take any credit for is the entrepreneurial wealth generated at or through Wipro, maybe partially, but I think that credit must really go to Mr. Premji for the fact that if there's anybody who really knows how to generate wealth, which he's done for himself and subsequently, I'd say, through Wipro Alumni. It is wonderful to see how you keep this connect. I'm also delighted to be here in your unique institution. Professor again mentioned about the bond that I have with you, and I really do believe that this has really been as much of an entrepreneurial journey for you, and it's wonderful that we started together on these paths as you've continued then to build this very, very great institution. So, you know what I'm going to talk to you about today. Manasa has already mentioned that the theme of the session, and I presume that you all are really in the midst of, since this is the Alumni Association meeting, the midst of really the development of your careers. And I'm sure you're already in the process of discovering that there are many opportunities, but these opportunities are also opportunities for self-discovery. And it is really, no industry offers such a range to make it a lifelong adventure. What I'm going to cover today, just give you a little perspective of the industry in which all of us work, where it's likely to go ahead, what its future is, and then move on to my theme, where I'll talk about the characteristics of the industry from the angle of career opportunities. I'm sure you see many other angles because you're immersed in it, which I may not have noted on, but I'll still, I think, will give you a certain perspective. I'll touch on the mosaic of opportunities. I think the most important part is really how do you prepare for the opportunities. A few don'ts, and I think we always need to remember both do's and don'ts. And then just to leave behind a few takeaways, I'd like to close with a few important things to remember. So, my own association with the Indian IT industry actually again started, reasonably late in my life, in the sense I'd been working for 20 years in a hardcore manufacturing businesses. And as Manasa pointed out, my previous assignment was really being chief executive of Shriram Refrigeration, a company located in Hyderabad. It didn't really necessarily, people thought, prepare me for an IT career. And I'm told that the joke was that when I came to Wipro, the first thing people said, look, how is he going to run a computer company? Because he doesn't know the difference between a refrigerator and a computer. But to which the answer really was that of course he does, because he knows what a refrigerator looks like. So a little unkind, but I must say that they all became very dear colleagues as we went through, and we then began to grow the company. And so this was 1984. And Wipro at that time was in its second year, so I was not responsible for starting the computer business. I could claim later on the credit for converting it or leading the transition into the software business. The whole industry at that time was just about 30 crores, and which in those days of rate conversion must have been less than $30 million, which would have been less than about 100 crores. There were several hardware companies, which are computer companies, if you will, which were in the range of about 2 to 7 crores. In fact, Wipro was a 6 crore company. And there was only one larger company, ICIM, which then later on, it was sort of went and got acquired by Fujitsu and somewhat disappeared from the scene. TCS was still a very obscure company. Nobody knew that this was really the big giant in the making. Infosys, your neighbor right opposite, it was literally a fledgling and a struggling company at that time. When you look at it today, it's amazing how close to their IPO, their first IPO came close to being a failure. It was really supported by the financial institutions in the end to see it through. It just shows you how we all, even then, didn't quite see the wave. I must personally say that Mr. Narayan Murthy offered me shares, and I didn't, either out of laziness or lack of application of mind, did not procure them at that stage. Anyhow, but the amazing thing is that there was a wonderful takeoff which was getting ready, and it was really in 1991. I think as our economy opened out, I think all of the changes that we see in India today really all actually began at that time. And the software industry really began taking off, and it grew at a compounded rate of about 60 to 70% right through almost a decade. Now that's an enormous thing when you keep on building a compounded growth rate of that sort. Today, we've created an industry which is, and we should, certainly something to be very proud about, created an industry which is well above $100 billion now. It is perhaps, I'd say, the only industry in the world where you could really say that India claims sustained global leadership. We are way and above the number one in the total outsourcing market or offshoring market, if you will. It is a source of pride for India. The amazing thing is how we've moved. What everybody thought in the beginning could be just an industry which would be able to manage, say, mainframe maintenance from a distance. And the incumbent players didn't realize that we could do much beyond that. And therefore, they ignored the industry. And in that sense, this is also another example of a true industry where India has played a disruptive role. This industry disrupted all the incumbents. And now what has happened is, you can see we are really covering every conceivable range of service opportunities. More and more product companies are coming up. Wonderful Web 2.0 companies are coming up. And I hope that the next thing we will begin to see is the sort of research which Professor talked about, where you could really say that truly, of course, we've begun making progress on patents, but really creating truly global knowledge-based entities out of the research that we do. And it will happen. I think it's been a progression as we go along. In a way, you might then say that people have been circulating stories of doom and gloom, the industry slowing down. But in reality, if some of you would have noticed that the Indian MNCs, as I now call them, the top 4 or 5, have actually doubled market share over the last 4 years. And at the same time, the India story is not the Indian MNC company also, as many of you would know yourself. all the large global players, be they service companies or product companies, have increasingly made India a part of, a very integral part of their story. In fact, in some companies, the team sizes they have in India today even is more than their team size in their parent base. But typically, if it's not, then it's the second largest anywhere in the world. So you can see it's a thing where people have begun to recognize the talent, appreciate that, and clearly it's well sought after. I think this industry has been changing enormously, but the exciting thing is that it will continue to change. And you all are going to be a part of that change. And change then represents opportunity. I'd say the future of the industry is in the hands of young professionals now like yourselves. And I'm quite sure that you'll continue to help this source of pride for the country to lead us forward into, in a sense, greater and greater heights as we go ahead. So with this little background, let me now move on to saying that here we are, this large, continuously growing, continuously evolving industry. What are some of its characteristics from the angle of job creation and career opportunities? I'm just going to give you broad characteristics here, which you may not have observed while you're looking at job A, job B, job C. You know, the first thing I'll tell you is that this is the industry which, to my knowledge, has the widest base of the pyramid. Now, what are the implications of that? The first implication is, of course, there are a lot of jobs. So you've got hundreds of thousands of jobs being created every year. And the nice thing is that they're cerebral jobs. We're not talking of, so it's a knowledge industry. The wide base also ensures, if you ask, almost automatic progression up till, I'd say, close to middle management level. There's a danger in that because a certain amount of complacency may creep in. When you see this progress, sometimes somebody may mistake those promotions for real personal growth and development as you went along, because it comes almost automatically. It is also the industry which has the largest risk of obsolescence, because tomorrow's graduates are going to be better equipped to deliver the new technologies and solutions which the world is going to need. And maybe here your own close bond, I'd sense one thing, that this is an institution you built where your alumni really have a close bond with the company, with your organization from the beginning. That might actually be a great way of their being able to avoid some of the obsolescence and get exposed to some of the newer technologies going ahead. It's an industry which has the highest middle management bulge. So I'm not sure whether you hear that expression from time to time when you read analyst reports on the industry. They begin to measure that. And the net effect of this and the obsolescence and the fact that at a certain stage the pyramid is getting narrower and narrower, having started with such a wide base, is that people tend to stall in their careers midway. And that is when, and if you've not adequately prepared yourself, that's when the midlife crisis comes and hits people. And it'll come as a surprise if you haven't looked ahead and said, yes, I need to keep on developing myself, changing myself, transforming myself, and growing myself. And on the other final, to close, one other characteristic of it, and then Professor, you mentioned it already, there is no industry which generates as many entrepreneurial opportunities as the IT industry does. Now, this doesn't have to be an exit path when somebody says my career is blocked. I think there it should be driven by many other factors, and maybe I'll touch on that later. It has to be, because entrepreneurship is not for everybody. So you've got to ask yourself whether that is the right thing for you, and whether you want to be an early stage, mid stage, or late stage entrepreneur. I think then becomes almost a coincidence as compared to saying, hey, is this the right thing for me? So let's, with this, move on to what I will describe very briefly as the mosaic of opportunities in the industry. And firstly, they really are mind-boggling. So it's a wonderful time to be here and say, hey, look, we're beginning our careers, or we're progressing our careers in the business, and you must be all observing this. And the good thing is that, you know, irrespective of where you start, each of those offers its own career path. And it gives you the opportunity to switch at the right time once you've developed an adequate amount of expertise, if you prepare yourself appropriately. I do believe that people should acquire a degree of depth before they begin to think that they want to rotate around, be it companies, organizations, or functions. You do need depth. In fact, I really believe that general management depth actually builds out of first demonstrating the capability to do something in great depth and expertise in one particular area. And then it's easier to transform and expand to other areas. Your careers can be in everything, and you're all in them, whether it is design, testing, networks and security, user experience, business analysis, practice development, product development, industry domains, research and development, and I hope you'll have more and more of that, pre-sales or sales, and of course the enabling functions that could be, people may say, in the industry I understand it, but I'd rather work in, say, talent acquisition, where I can assess the quality of the talent, quality control, and so on and so forth. So when you look at it, this list could go really on and on, which just shows you how many opportunities exist. And in this, then you come around to saying what should be your criteria to choose which of those you go for, because that then becomes perhaps the more important thing when there's so much choice. And sometimes there is a danger in too much choice. And I'd say that here what you should do is to choose what you're passionate about. If you follow your strengths, if you're true to yourself, success will follow. So for example, if you want to have a testing career, I'd say you must have a test to break attitude. You must have attention to detail. You must have the ability to explore beyond stated functionality. Sometimes understand the unmet needs. So you're really looking even almost from a business angle to say what are the unmet needs which have not been expressed, even while you're doing a testing role. If you want to be in the networking area, you must have a passion to provide thorough and complete and fast turnarounds to your customers' problems and their requests. If you don't have that passion and you begin to say, good Lord, I'm the one who's working 24/7, then that's not the right area for you if you're in a support role of that sort. So if I were to try and reduce this to a few small principles for career choice, I'd say first is examine the characteristics and traits needed to be successful in a given role or in a given path. Then critically examine yourself to assess if these are the areas where you have strengths and you're passionate about these. And then be very careful to recognize a mismatch. And if you find that mismatch, it can happen it's better than if it's sooner than later. I began my career when having chosen civil engineering in my for my studies, I should say, my engineering, because Roorkee was really well known for it at that time, and it probably still is. But almost all the leading civil engineering projects you could think of in the country were initiated by people from there. So it seemed to be the place to go. I realized very quickly after I got in that it was a complete mismatch for me. And now luckily I had the grades at the end of the first year where they allowed me to switch. And I chose electrical engineering. It had nothing to do with the information technology that I finally landed up in. But even then, all of it has its background. It certainly helped when I shifted to my refrigeration business, or because almost all of these, and I also went through a career where I was earlier manufacturing electric fans and so on. So the electrical engine came in very handy, and elements of that actually finally also had a huge value in, although IT as a subject didn't even exist. So you can see how change took place. In fact, IT as a subject didn't exist when I did my MBA in Asian Institute of Management a few years later. So you can see opportunities will also crop up which you can't even visualize as you see yourself today. So the three criteria: first, look at the characteristics of the job and the role, and each one does have a very distinct characteristic. Let me tell you that. You may not realize it, but there are requirements, and they lead to certain type of people will succeed much better in those. And do your self-assessment. That I think is very important. Most of us just don't do that. And it's well worth taking a piece of paper and jotting them down. And finally, look out for those mismatches, because if you delay that, you may almost feel that then you've got lost years. As you grow up in your careers, what should you be striving for, and what do you think you should logically expect for the effort and the input that you will put in? I'd say the first is you will want to be recognized as an expert in your chosen area. You've got to be seen as the go-to person, the knowledge person, in that as you acquire more and more depth. In the process, of course, your compensation and job satisfaction should keep increasing, because you're doing a good job at what you're good at. Of course, your job satisfaction, and you should measure and note that. Your collaboration skills, your team management skills, your people skills should improve, and those are absolutely key. So many people actually who may be wonderfully brilliant but just don't progress because they lack these team working skills. Your decision-making skills should improve, and I'll give you one thought on decision-making a little later. Your organization should now start looking towards you to set the vision and direction in your area. And I believe that this is the time when you've acquired that degree of expertise, that you should then begin to say, where do I now begin to look for new areas, different functions in which I can acquire skills? So you broaden your responsibility base. I don't think you should do it too early, you shouldn't do it too late, because then you get trapped in an area where you say growth is just going to go so far in this, because now at best you'll become a departmental head or whatever it is. So you've got to look out for the opportunities to be able to move beyond some of those areas. How do you prepare for these opportunities? And I think that really is, to my mind, the most important part of my talk with you today. And I think what is key is not what you do, but your attitude. It's your approach, your value systems, which will matter more than anything else. I think first thing is you must develop a lifelong habit of learning. It's true everywhere, but if more than anything else, this is a knowledge business. And if you haven't kept yourself up to date, if you haven't continuously learned, frankly, if you stop learning, you're dead. You must, to my mind, because you can't do this all yourselves, it's great if you build your own community for knowledge sharing and knowledge learning. And I'm not saying even that this is we all have in our organizations and you probably have in yours, knowledge management function, knowledge communities. Of course, become active members of those, but also build knowledge communities in the sense that your friends, you're getting together, yes, for fun, for entertainment, but you're also a great source of knowledge for each other. And people who do that collaboratively actually exponentially increase their knowledge. You reinforce each other. I think it's important to continue to be hands-on. If you see as examples, you've got Dr. Devi Shetty at Narayana Hridayalayas. He still performs surgeries. So does also Dr. Sharan Patil, who heads Sparsh. They keep themselves hands-on because how are they going to lead, understand, see the latest if you're not doing it yourself also. Your attitude, it's amazing, there will be setbacks. And those of you who choose entrepreneurial paths, you can be sure there'll be huge setbacks. You've got to keep your positive attitude through this whole thing. There has to be an approach of saying, yes, we'll find a way around. And the important thing is you've got to keep investing in yourself and investing in your career. Because sometimes the steps you're taking, don't look for your immediate payback, because that payback may not be visible. But if you keep the long run in mind, you'll see the path to which you're heading. Most important thing to my mind as you deal with people is build trust. First, learn to trust people. Learn to be trustworthy yourselves. It takes very hard work. It's a lifelong journey. It takes integrity, it takes commitment. And do remember that what takes many, many, many years to build can be destroyed by a single act of either thoughtlessness, indiscretion, or whatever it may be. Something where you don't prove worthy of the trust of the people who trusted you. And then, very important for us today, particularly I say for an industry as a whole, we've achieved size, we've achieved scale, we've certainly innovated in many ways, but that, if you ask me, is really where the future lies for the industry and for each of you as in individuals. If you don't make those changes, if you don't look at it and say, how are we going to do things differently, that again is a slow path to, in a sense, obsolescence. And what you need to do is here, learn to connect the dots. Innovation very often is the interface between, you might say, different functional blocks. So you see those white spaces and look at things differently by bringing these together. You've got to be able to see the larger picture and see how to bring things together. But more important, perhaps than all of these, I think is this typical R&D mindset towards an approach of what you're doing in innovation. But it doesn't mean that innovation means only technology innovation. I think market innovation is a huge issue here, which we've all got to learn in India. We're making progress. I must say that the first time when Professor, you approached me and I was very happy to agree to come immediately the moment I'd heard from you. I had thought in my own mind that I'll talk of technology and market leadership. But I think, as Jagdish and all of you suggested, that perhaps this is more directly linked to where you would see specifically where each of you is going. So now, having covered through how to go about it, so we've talked about the range of opportunities, what exists ahead, how you go about it. Let me spend a few minutes, and I do believe that you must always look at the positive much more than the negative, but still it's important to look at what's not to do. And I'll give a small thing as you grow further, focus a lot more on your own successes than failures. You know, sometimes failures can induce a negative mindset. So look at your successes, bask in your success. What is it that what your strengths which led to those, and build those to go further. There are a lot of interesting research studies which show you how people who focus, I'm not saying you should not learn from your mistakes, of course we should, but then don't dwell on them, don't let them pull you down. Move on to celebrate your wins. Now coming down to what not to do. First thing is, of course, taking shortcuts, being expedient about something. It's important to do it right the very first time. Making commitments which you can't deliver. Our customers tell us that, your people are wonderful, but why can't they learn to say no sometimes? Why can't they say that this is not feasible? And that's because maybe and it's not a bad trait in itself, that we'll say we will go the extra mile, we'll do something, or you don't want to be able to turn something down. But it's important to do it in a balanced way. And I think when we do that, actually you earn the customer's respect when you get them around and they realize you're the expert. In fact, yesterday I met somebody who's been in the IT consulting world for a while. He said, one of the biggest troubles here in this business is, and that is the fact that the CEO or whoever the end users, they may take months in making a decision, but when they do, they want the IT solution yesterday. They have absolutely no clue what depth and detail goes into it. And when you do that, you lead up with unrealistic industry, and the people concerned get a bad name saying you overshot, you didn't meet your commitment. It's important to be able to get that across, because in the end you may put in extra effort. Let me tell you, there's never been gratitude for that extra effort. The only thing the customer remembers is what that you overshot on the time and didn't deliver as per their expectations, although that budget might have been, or the time frames might have been completely unrealistic to start with. The next thing is putting your individual aspirations over team goals, seeking to corner glory, if you will. And a corollary to that is, and that's really negative, is denigrating anybody else to project yourself. And I'm hoping that people would not build values which even make them consider something of that sort. That has to be your nature, that has to be your way of life. You don't have to grow at the cost of others. There's enough opportunities for everybody else. Danger of becoming complacent because of early growth. I told you the phenomenon that you're getting your promotions, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And finally, the last one, and I'm sure you've been instilling all the right values in them here, Professor, and that is never to compromise on integrity. It's sad, but it happens all the time. Every time I talk to, and I'm not, it may be, say, 1% of the population, less than that even, but each one is heartbreaking when it has happened, because invariably people lose their self-respect, they lose their standing in the community, they let down their families, and in reality destroy their own careers. And more often than not, integrity, and integrity is not just financial, but that looks like the more obvious one, and I won't touch on integrity as a whole as a topic today beyond saying, look, never compromise on it. And integrity, to my mind, even includes intellectual integrity. You may not get caught out for it, or somebody will not lose their job, but you say what you mean. You don't, you don't make statements behind other people's backs, for example. Or you build on something in true reality which you believe in, and then commit to that and deliver on that. And in our business, of course, there's integrity of the sort of protecting intellectual property, not violating things like that. But do keep these in mind. It just amazes me how, people who should obviously know better, there are violations. And I think each one of you should be able to look back on your lives and careers and say, we would never have fallen foul of that. This particular don't. And if you do, then that will be a matter of source and pride for. And I myself would be delighted to learn that, look, each one of you sailed through your lives without falling foul of this particular barrier. So now I really summarize some of these things by perhaps coming up with a few more important takeaways which I'd like you to consider and keep in mind. First thing I would say is that in terms of one of the qualities that you need to deliver, to develop, Firstly, I think to grow, you need to be both a good manager and a good leader. Now, some of these, you might say, you know, there are a lot of people will say, hey, I'm only a leader. Or management gurus will keep extolling the virtues of leadership over management. I've heard a phrase which I actually think is ridiculous, which says that we are over-managed and under-led. Well, that's not true. There are two sides of a coin. Management is planning, attention to detail, including some of the knowledge that you need to build up. Leadership is about vision, creating shared visions, carrying a team together, developing others, mentoring others. So all of these are two very important different aspects of your job. And I think the underpinning for both of these are, in a way, knowledge on the management side, I'd say much more, and the skills you develop as a leader, which must be continuously built and sharpened. And these are not mutually exclusive, they are really both prerequisites for success. I think it's even more important to be a good human being and consciously do no one any harm. I think it's important for all of us to be aware of our place in society. I was pleased to hear that, you know, your alumni have given back to the institution so easily, so early in their lives. And one of the thoughts I do want to leave with you is get into the habit of giving early in your lives. You know, we are, whatever it is, we may all have aspirations and compare ourselves with others who have much more. But the fact is that we in India, for us, we are a privileged community. And you can give in many ways. You can give of your time, you can volunteer, but there could be programs you get involved with. Your organizations probably have programs which you can contribute towards. Then I'd say build a bigger purpose for yourself. When someone asks you what you're doing, I think you've all heard of the story of the three bricklayers. You should be like the bricklayer who responded that I'm building a temple. So you should think of yourself as contributing to building an awesome product or building a great company or contributing to your customer's success. And for this, no matter what your role, you must understand your company's business and your customer's business. You must empathize with your customer's business. Once you do that, then you realize that what you're doing has a role to play in that customer's success. And coming now to my second last point, I think I'll share, well, a couple more. I'd say that a lot of people feel that, luck has played a very large role in success. And that is true. I look at my career and say, look at the amount of luck I've had. How I landed up in Wipro after running a refrigeration and a fan manufacturing company. Mr. Premji happened to meet an old friend of mine from Roorkee 19 years after we graduated, when he was in America, and I'd only met the friend for the first time after 19 years, just a few months earlier. But he was an old friend, so when Premji asked him, do you know anybody in India who can run a computer company but doesn't have to be a computer person? So he gave him my name, and Mr. Premji came back and called me. Otherwise, perhaps I've continued on in the engineering world that I had been in. Certainly, if he'd advertised for the job, I would not have applied. And I think if I'd applied to an advertised job, he would probably not have selected me. So the important thing, the point I'm really making here linked with this is you don't really know what lies ahead. And the industry and technology are going to continue to change. They will metamorphose. Some of these, when you make the right change, it may look like luck though. But sometimes you create your luck and position yourself to create those opportunities for yourself. And then look at the confidence, because luck then comes to a large measure for those who helped to create it also. Many of you will be faced with very important career choices as you go ahead. And this one I want to talk about is your approach to decision making. I'd say when you do a major career path switch, and the examples I think I have you've seen in my life two ones. Obviously, if I moved from engineering into information technology, or then the entrepreneurial switch, I'd say those decisions, at least, there could be personal decisions which are really, really important for you. And that's it, do them with your head, your heart, and your gut. Your head gives you the pros and cons. You could take a white sheet, put down the pros and cons. It's amazing that 80-90% of the time, the real decision will jump out at you. Your heart is when you ask yourself, what is it that I'm going to enjoy doing? What is it that I'm going to be passionate about? What is it that is going to bring more joy to all the people around me. And the gut is your instinct, where you look back, look ahead and say 5 or 10 years from now, when I look back at this decision, what is it that's going to turn out to be the right one for not just me, but for my family, all the people who care for me. What is it that's going to work out best? What's going to be the best in the long run? And when you do that, if they're all in the same sync, then of course you know you're likely to have made the right decision. Even then you could make a mistake. But I say unlikely once you've got them all in sync. And if they're not, that's the time when you go out and seek external counsel. You go to somebody who you respect, somebody who you admire, somebody who's worked with you. In fact, when I did my change from engineering into IT, the person I consulted, and sadly he's just passed away, talked about only 2 or 3 people, Dr. Indiresan who was at Roorkee in the days that I was there. So I had a very close relationship with him, which continued. So do go back. Maybe you should be coming when you have a tough decision. Seek out a professor for wisdom and advice. And finally, I want to leave you with a thought. It's in a manner of speaking, you might say, not surprising, given that I have the name of my new company is Happiest Minds. I want each one of you to remember that, and I'll quote Aristotle here, who says that the purpose and aim of all human existence and life is happiness. And happiness for you should be now and every day. It's not a distant mirage for which you're working in the future. Everybody says, I'm going to be happy when I've done A, B, or C things, but happiness is day after day after day. It's a mindset. And I'll give you another quote from a person called Dr. Bronnie Ware, done a wonderful research study. And he says that life is a choice. It is your life. Choose consciously, choose wisely, choose honestly, choose happiness, and success will follow. Thank you very much. So, Professor, we'll take some questions.
Yeah, please. My name is Navi. I was the one who's probably called the next 2 years back. I work for a company called Schneider Electric. I take care of one of their R&D divisions. This question is a bit longer, but I try to keep it short, because this is something which is troubling me and my peers since some time. I'll start with the question and then give the context.
Okay.
Why do we not have enough architects in Indian ecosystem?
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay.
And then I just try to expand and I try to answer my own way, and then I'll probably bring you down.
Okay.
Since 20-30 years, as you also mentioned, we have been one of the biggest outsourcing center, or biggest outsourcing resources for the whole world. Has this affected the way we train our people? Has this affected the way we bring people into the market, I mean the talent into the market? As I just recall one of the numbers which the consulting firm put, there are about 350 to 400,000 engineers coming out of India. Out of them, R&D ready are around 30 to 35,000. Real R&D ready, you can again bring 10% down, 300 to 4,000 people. While we are generating so much of talent, while we are creating people for the industry, are we creating it enough for the future? Are we creating people for more empowerment, or more, let's say, product ownership, more R&D in India?
Sure. So, I'll tell you, different people have different views on this. Whereas your question is very precise on the context of, hey, do we have enough architects? But I would even broaden that question to say, are we producing people of the right quality? Is that quality going up? Are we producing enough of people who, let's say, are meeting specific needs, or do they have to be retrained all over again when they come into industry, for that matter? And architects, of course, it's a more difficult skill to get. Obviously fits into some of the category. Overall, and I think you'll find the world will split into 2 parts, where people will say that, look, quality of education is going down, etc., and we're just not doing the right job. Versus my approach, though, on this, my attitude towards this at least, is I believe that every generation, for one thing, is smarter, brighter than the previous ones, and they're actually better taught also. Just as the teachers are better and doing a better job. Now, having said that, markets keep enlarging. So, of course, there are a whole range of top institutes which no doubt provide absolutely quality education. So if people haven't got enough, that's because they have failed in picking up what the institution had to offer. But the quality is all there. I actually, even amongst all the many questions I asked, I even asked Jagdish to send me the list of your subjects. I was absolutely zapped by it. To think that you'll have got the opportunity to learn things like your curriculum indicates. Now what happens is market enlarges. Obviously it gets wider and wider and wider, and everybody is not going to sustain those same standards. So yes, quality will drop off at the fringes, but also let's also be clear that needs are different at different fringes. So maybe from some of those less fortunate institutions, you will get graduates who are also less fortunate because they didn't get the opportunities that say people like you got, but still there will be a need that they can fulfill. So by and large those needs have a whole range, and I think we turn out a pretty balanced group of people overall coming into industry, getting jobs every year. It's not that the industry is generating unemployed people, let's be clear. If it was, then that would be where the backlash would come. People are coming in and getting employed almost straight away. There may be the odd year when industry slows down enormously and then people hold on and defer their journings. So I actually believe the industry is doing a pretty good job. I'm not saying that there's no scope for improvement. Because you talked about architects, you know, I think maybe as the industry has evolved, and as we said, we started all the way from mainframe maintenance, and then we said, okay, we'll do X, Y, Z things. Then a next boom came with Y2K. None of that lent itself to saying we'll create that category of groups. But subsequently, as we went into developing internet solutions for customers, and they had to be turned around very rapidly, of course we've begun developing our range. Is it one of the more difficult skills to get? I'd say yes, it is. But it's not as difficult a skill to get as today an analyst, a big data person, for example. Or so, you know, skills, their demand patterns keep changing. And what is the hottest skill today? I'd say it's anything linked with analytics. So, and as the market need grows, I'd say the input and institutions like yours respond towards generating a variety of needs. And there may be a bit of a time lag, that's fine. In a way that's almost somewhat inevitable, because oversupply could also have its own problems. So the institutions are responding to market demand, sensing it, and from what I see in your syllabus, I'd say that syllabus is very tuned to market demands. All the new things which are happening right now are actually very much being taught to you right today. And of course I believe that students, I keep hearing people say, I went back to my school and good Lord, what are they doing? They're not learning anything nowadays. They're got negative comments. And I think they're all much, much brighter than we ever were. So it's...
Thank you. So, I'm Gautam Hegde. I'm from the first batch, and I am an entrepreneur. I run a company called Backend. Last, just my 13th year now, and we're visiting the products.
Ashok, this is a baby born from the very first batch.
Oh,
and IIIT is a proud parent of a 12-year-old healthy growing baby.
Very good.
So my question is, Wipro had some great products in the beginning, like yesterday. So reminding us, Mr. Plan, Wipro 456. I personally use both of those products,
Okay.
and it kind of died out. And I think went to those services, and then so I just wanted to understand that part of history. One part of the question. Another one is, what would be the product roadmap for the country as such now, in this time frame now?
Sure. You know, in terms of what happened at Wipro at that time, and again, it's perhaps not so important for everybody here to know that. Your second question is much more generic, long-term importance for the industry. And but I'd say it was a sense that there was a truly sort of idea-driven person who wanted to do new things. And he's the guy who actually created Wipro Infotech, Ashok Soota. And within a year he got restless with that, and he wanted to do a software business. So Mr. Premji said, all right, go ahead if that's what you want to do, and created Wipro Systems, which were then two separate entities, both private limited companies. And that is how I got into the scene, because Ashok wanted a change, and you could sense even when I came in, he's a wonderful chap. He left me with, and he and I are very good friends today. I met him just a few months ago in California. And the funny thing is that both of us were in the same restaurant waiting for our VCs to join us soon for lunch. And we congratulated each other for doing something new at our respective ages. So, and we said, hey, good, we got 10 minutes together because we were early. And we had a great chat catching up with each other. And so Ashok, having started this, I think was 10 years ahead of his time with Wipro Systems. He was bang on with Wipro Infotech. And India wasn't ready to be able to go out and create a, Instaplan. Instaplan in itself was not half as ambitious as the thing which was, say, 4, 5, 6 or whatever. It intended to be like a Lotus 1, 2, 3. But it's not a question of creating a good product. How do you go and take it to the market at that stage? And what really happened is Ashok was not the one responsible for that. He very quickly, shortly after the fact, for personal reasons, relocated to the US, where he's become a very successful serial entrepreneur. But then Wipro, on the software side, lurched from one CEO to another for about 6 or 7 years. By which time, 84, I told you I had joined, 84 to 91, the computer business had grown fairly large. And in whatever thing, and again here it's a function, a little bit of luck too, it is at that time that Mr. Premji gave me both the businesses, merged the two together. In fact, we all got merged into Wipro Limited because we'd by now become the larger part, so it had to be the projected public part also. And it so also happened, I told you, the growth of the software industry took off in 91. So I was handed a business which was ready to take off and could therefore claim a large part in the credit of its success. Coming to your question of products and services, you see a lot of people sometimes say, hey, it's like somebody who's, particularly people in product companies, and I've seen this at very close quarters, frankly, as I took a certain decision in Mindtree to develop a product. The product people tended to look down on the services people. The rhythms of the businesses are different. And people say, hey, why is it that we're only doing services and not products? Those services also require a lot of expertise. They require skill. They require understanding of customers' business. They require a deep understanding of technology in order to be able to deliver. But the rhythms of the businesses are different. And I think sometimes it's very difficult to combine under the umbrella of a services company, a product company, because they're going to move in different paths. Now, having said that, there are two things happening at the moment, which are really very important, sort of, I'd say, trends which are influencing where the industry is going to go in the future. One is, of course, that India is now, everybody said, why can't India produce products? But we are producing now, and we're producing them more and more. The entrepreneurial activity behind product development companies is amazing. I mean, when people say that, today Bangalore is recognized as one of the top 10 entrepreneurial spots in the world, and what is coming out very largely are product companies. So that's an evolution which is taking place, and perhaps it was a important process. I'll put it from another angle. The services business is perhaps was even more needed for India, because after all, look, it's a much larger generator of employment. Maybe not necessarily a wealth. There are huge multipliers on products. But if you look at the needs of the country, but both needs to be fulfilled. I mean, why should we not generate our own world-leading products? That path we are on. The third thing I told you was that there is a difficulty in combining a product and a service on the same umbrella. I'm not saying that you cannot do it, but you find it very difficult to find a services company which really built a world-leading product and say, oh, look, we are amongst the top 3 in the world. And that has to be the mindset. When you're going to create a product, then you've got to be a global leader in that product. Otherwise, you're going to just get marginalized and or fizzle away after some time. But today, this resolution of product versus services is taking a different path because of the emergence of software as a service. You are now delivering everything which you are offering as a service, and therefore your platform or your product becomes core towards delivering the service. And to that extent, a services company will very clearly need to create its own platforms and use those to be able to deliver their services, and that's happening today. So two important trends: product companies are taking off, and product as a service is taking off. Also hands are here. I'll take them in this sequence and come back left to right.
My name is Hitesh. I am currently part of a startup. I'm running a startup called IIIT. I'll give you a short context before asking my question. I graduated into the mic. Yeah. I graduated with an engineering degree in the year 2005. During the 4 years of my engineering, I was at my creative best. I was actually producing a lot of great things according to my point of view. I was being recognized by a lot of people. I graduated, I joined a run-of-the-mill IT company in Bangalore. The work seemed great, 6 months. After 6 months, the sort of the monotony sort of setting in. I realized that this is not what I sort of looked my career. 2007, I decided to join IIIT-B. I was at my creative best again. For the next 2 years, I was really producing something that I was proud of. I graduated here, went out into industry again. I got a much better job in some of the finest companies in India. And again, after the initial sort of the dream run, now it starts setting in. 2011, I sort of took the whole leap to start my own company because I thought that is what. And there's a reason I came to that because I realized that when I was not making money was when I was at my creative best. So I said, okay, when you're not making money, you have nothing to lose, so why not? So I took the whole leap and I started it. But there's one very simple thing that I found missing when I did that. All throughout my life, I've actually found people who used to come and give me advice, who used to tell me, hey, this is what you should be doing, this is not you should be doing. But having come from a sort of a very lower middle class sort of family, first generation entrepreneur, nobody has a business background, I found that the lack of mentorship was very, very significant when I started my journey. So my question to you right now is that what should people like me do, or what should people either be doing to sort of mentor people like us who are first generation entrepreneurs?
2 or 3 things here. I mean, one, so your question in that context is, hey, one of your biggest challenges you faced as a young entrepreneur is that you've really felt that I wish I had mentorship available in a larger degree. Now, it's not that it's not there. Obviously, there are this thing, TIE, for example, as an organization, and if you reach out, has a mentorship program going. And I'm not sure whether you attempted to tap into that.
I am part of the TIE.
You are a part of the TIE. So, people do give up their time, etc., to be able to get on to providing such mentorship. NASSCOM has a forum for young industries. Of course, now that the product companies have chosen to create an own association, I'm sure they will also set up, because that's where actually the toughest part of the need for mentorship comes in some of these new startups. Third thing is, you can sometimes actually reach out for the advice also. A lot of, one way of in fact getting it is some people invite onto their entities relatively senior people who've been there, done that, and say, come on to advisory boards. Many of them agree. I get countless requests like that, but as a philosophy would not get onto them, because I say I've got enough to do because I'm creating another new entity myself at the moment. It's still success in the making. In fact, I'm hoping that on a future occasion, if I have a chance to be introduced, there'll be more to be said about Happiest Minds as a part of the story. We've just finished our first full financial year, so maybe you'll hear something about what we have accomplished in 1 year in a short time when we make public announcements. But back to your thing. So I personally, for example, during the course of even the last, since the inception of Happiest Minds, although it may have been the busiest period for me, if somebody reached out to me and said, I've got this plan, come onto my advisory board, I said, no, I won't, but I'd be happy to come and discuss your plan with you. So come over, send me the plan ahead, bring your team along if you like, and let's run through what are the basic issues. So people, if you reach out, you will get people who will be able to help you out. And so seek out people to come onto your advisory board, be active on forums like this. The third thing I must tell you also here is that quite often what you need is not just mentorship sometimes, it's even understanding the specialities in given functions, where if you don't do the right things at the right time, actually they come back and bite you later. And you may not realize that. And I think that's one of the biggest things for an entrepreneur to be aware of. And for that, I think you need the right set of financial advisors, because you can't know it yourself. In fact, one of the best things I felt that happened to me just now when we created Happiest Minds is, see, there I started with, at Mindtree, we started with a team which was all set. Here I announced it because I had stepped out and I had nobody with me, and I said I'll take 5 months to launch, and I'll build the team during those 5 months period. But I needed the announcement because the announcement brought the team in. Then all the old friends of mine and colleagues, the people who'd worked with me in years, all got in touch and we built the team within the time frame I'd said. But I had nobody to help make the plan, which I had to put the VCs, for example. So I engaged advisors for those. And I must tell you, the quality of those people available in the market today is an order of magnitude difference in what was, because years have gone by. So that industry has built up itself. So I got a financial advisor, I got a people related areas and advisor, I got a marketing advisor. And I think we got more new ideas in than I would have got from the team which had worked in a similar environment. And those new ideas came in when the team came, their ideas, and we suddenly had a richer set of ideas. More importantly, and I'll give you one simple example, it may not be, after one of the things is wealth generation, and you want your teams to be beneficiaries of that wealth generation. So again, as a philosophy, everybody on the rolls of our company is got stock options as on, and that at the same price at which the founders got, right up till 31st March. Now we may be forced to increase the price. But a whole year, we built a team size of 800 people in this first, at the end of March. Everybody has that price. But you know, the rules and regulations pertaining to stock options have changed so much all over the world, and particularly here in India, we've changed them. If you don't create the right scheme, you'll be giving money, and a lot of that money will just go away as taxation, or the person will lose out. So how do you get to know the right time to do it? If you delay it, you've already lost an opportunity. So it is things like this in which your advisors really come in to help. And I'd say you seek also, and then of course you have to pay for that, but hopefully one has the wherewithal to be able to handle some of that. So both voluntary help and hire, I'd say, become a part of getting started. But it's not an easy task, there's no question about it. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ajay. I graduated from IIIT in 2007, and ever since I've been a part of a startup. And recently I've been a part of, we've started a company called Hudunku, and also running a services company called IIT. And for some reason I've never worked in a company more than 20 people in it. So, so my question is basically, during the journey of being an entrepreneur in terms of running things and everything else, there's a lot of highs and lows in terms of the whole journey, right? And this is a personal question in terms of what is it that has kept you motivated in your lowest point, that kind of pulls you through that phase? And how do you kind of see beyond that cloud of, the doubt and your peers putting pressure on you, your family kind of asking you to quit and take up a job or whatever it is? So what has pulled you through that?
Sure. You know, see, there are two angles to this whole thing. One is, of course, the fact that you need to be personally aware when you enter into a cycle like this that there will be high highs and low lows. So when you enter into the mindset that this was almost inevitable that something like this would happen, and now let us see what we're going to have to do to go through this. So I would say there are mindset issues, and then there are really concrete steps. Once you see that those concrete steps are going to lead to an action, and you're clear in your mind that it can lead to that action, I'd say that you'll see the end result coming through. And I can say this for, when I was involved in leading Shriram Refrigeration, if I did not have a blueprint in the first 100 days, where I could look at that blueprint and I said, I know we'll make money within a year. Because you knew the steps, you knew the conscious things, and then you work towards that, and then you transmit that confidence. So that's very important. Now, so I'll take the mindset approach first. The mindset approach, I mentioned to you, don't dwell excessively on your failures and what went wrong. Now begin to say, hey, look, these are some of the things we did right. These are our strengths. These are the new things which are going to be needed in order for us to be able to recover. On the other side, you've got an issue of saying specific steps to be taken. Go back and re-examine your strategy, what went wrong, and be clear that you're bound to need to change. Why did 99 out of the 100 companies which started in the years 97 to 2000 all failed at the time of the internet boom? Because when the dot-com bust came, they were left high and dry. The reason that Mindtree went on to become such a successful IPO is we realized that the strategy has to be changed. Some people had a huge uproar saying you're changing the basis on which we decided to start the company. And this isn't what we set out to create. That was to be in where we were totally different from the other guys. That's true, but then if that is the case, there's no business left on that front anymore. So you had to develop new skills and capabilities. So you've got to be prepared for change and keep your own mindsets up through a positive thing. And I'd say that, I'll go back to my happiness story here. Keep that in mind all the time. It just helps you to keep, in a sense, saying, yes, of course we'll come out of it. Build that confidence and capability. I'm going to switch to this side because I haven't. I know we're running a little tight compared to the original time schedule.
No problem.
But if I'm okay for saying taking another 10-15 minutes of questions, because there were at least 3 or 4 hands when I looked this side and we haven't reached there at all.
I'm Ashish. I passed out in 2012. I'm a recent pass out. And I'm working for a company called Thoroughgood Associates, which is into business intelligence consulting. There are 2 questions which are interlinked. As you mentioned, sir, Indian IT industry is a pyramid which is having largest scales. The advantage of which is obvious. We have a lot of jobs at the entry level. The onus then lies on the middle management to get the best out of the entry level freshers. Do they sometimes, or do the Indian IT industry sometimes compromise on the quality of the work, seeking the quantity? That is the first question. The impact of this, which is the second question, will this act as an hurdle, or will this act as an hurdle to make a move up the hierarchy for the freshers? Because since it has the highest base, widest space, so the competition is very high.
Yeah, you know, 2 things. One is there's an element somewhere in your question, and it's the same thing when people say, hey, students below are not as bright. People coming and say my middle management is not doing the right thing and therefore my career is going to get affected. I'd say get that out of your mind for a start. You know, it really isn't. You're responsible for yourself, for what you'll achieve, and by and large your people are doing as good a job as they know how to do. The Indian industry has really been built on the grounds of saying it delivers quality. It wouldn't have grown like this if it hadn't. And it has sustained quality even at a time when the industry is growing 65-70%. That's a challenge. Managing growth at that rate is a huge challenge. Now, I'm not saying things couldn't be better. Of course, they should be better. As it's attempted to move into newer areas and moved up value chain, there is a learning curve associated with it. And there are periods during which when people say, hey, look, you know, the real boardroom type of work that we want to do, we don't think we can trust Indian companies with that. And it's not that Indian companies are walking away from that. They're saying, no, we will get there. So you continue to make the challenge, and then you set your goals to say we'll be as good as the next company can be. And that has been demonstrated by the industry in sector after sector, in skill after skill, in career path after career path. So I believe that nobody is going to hold back your own career other than yourself, if that is your mind. So get it out of your mind, because then you've got somebody else to blame. That's a fall guy. So is this going to hold anybody's careers up? No. Look at the industry. The industry is still double market share.
But then, sir, we don't see as many product companies being launched or doing well as we see in the West.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been through that with this gentleman. You are now seeing the wave, and it's the right time at which the wave has come. The industry has provided employment for 5 million people or more if you look at the indirect employment. And we're moving into a stage where with the experience built up, you also need market sizes to create a market for products. India hardly had a market until the last 5-6 years. That's all changing. It's changing dramatically. There are hundreds of product companies. So again, you want to think a little out of tune. You just see the number of product companies coming up every day. Look at the number of funds which are available in the market saying we're available to invest in IT. Nobody's investing in services anymore. Let me be clear. I must have been the only exception which got money about a year ago. All the money is going into products, or Web 2.0 companies, or software as a service companies.
So my name is Akhil. I am from the second batch, so almost 11 years is when I passed out. I worked with SAP. My question is on a more touchy level. We all tend to get monotonous as a society as well when we keep doing the same thing for an organization. When does one know that this is indeed a midlife crisis?
Yeah. You know, I must confess that to really know, you have to be immersed in it, and fortunately I wasn't. Okay? But, and I was maybe lucky, maybe if I had drifted on just maybe a couple of more years within, and I found it difficult to change from where I was. I was right at the time, 19 years, I should have been thinking of making a change, and I didn't do it until I got an external stimulus. But I'll tell you what could be some of the characteristics, and I can think out loud. Obviously, when you wake up feeling that you've got a lack of energy, you're not enjoying what you're doing, and it should not creep up on you. But it does, and one anticipates. Then, if you begin to see if you recognize the problem, I think a part of the problem is recognizing that this is where it is, and then working consciously to saying, hey, how do I resolve that issue? And I think it really is that. I think firstly the self-acknowledgement. If there are certain, let us say, mood changes, and you're not attributing, you're not realizing what they are, and then time is drifting by, it's becoming more and more. But if you've done introspection, you examined yourself, and say, hey, look, this is the reason. And it's just suddenly you're seeing a mismatch between what you would have liked to see as your capability, but the next opportunity available to you. Or you're getting passed by because now you've not come in for this given promotion and there aren't too many going, because you reach that middle management layer where it's no longer automatic, it's pure role based, the role doesn't exist. I think when you look at that, you've got to consciously work towards saying, where do I develop the skill? Even if it means taking a break sometimes. Come back and do your next level of education, could be a thing. You know, I did my MBA 6 years after I had done my engineering. Partly because I think it's a waste of engineering education if you go into MBA straight away. So many people do that. I don't think that happens so much in your things, but I think out of the IITs and saying, very large proportion of people then just go in to do the MBAs. You've got to at least learn what you were taught and practice on that knowledge. After that, develop your new skills. That is why I also told you, I don't believe you should be seeking to change your functions, etc. too early. Get to be recognized as an expert in an area. It's easy then to transmit that, to say, yes, this guy is not only an expert here, but also somewhere else. Because he has developed the capability to demonstrate that he can build that sort of expertise. He or she. Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, not exactly a question, but you started talking about market innovations, and I would love to hear more about it.
You know, I'll tell you, there's a danger in taking up something and giving an instant 1 second response to that. And I think also when I do a session like that, I actually gave an address on technology and market innovation to Intel has an annual gathering of their teams and several hundred people size. So I'd really chosen that, and they were concerned about the fact that, and which I kind of rubbed into them though, that they were technology leaders but not market leaders. So if you look at any innovation surveys, you never find Intel coming up, and yet they've probably changed the world more than, say, Apple has in its own way, although they are always #1 in any innovation rating. So therefore there are a lot of issues involved in marketing innovation. And if you were to ask me where, one thing is that in market innovation, more than anything else, you need to be understanding, you need to understand the market, you need to see the demographics, how they're changing, what is the way markets are evolving, and it is arising out of those that you come back through this. There are very few, you know, somebody like, say, Steve Jobs is saying that, look, he never asks his customers because they don't know what they want. But there, of course, I'd say there's only 1 or 2 geniuses who can do that. Don't get misled by a statement like that. You really need to know what your customer wants, and you need to do everything from market research, focus groups, where you're sitting and dialoguing with them, experimental usage along with the customer on how the customer is going to make a few maybe leading edge customers, particularly in our type of job, if you want to do an innovation, actually become like your trial customers. Then they know that you're working with them for co-development in the process. Make them your partners in the innovation. So many, many things, but I'd need a separate talk if I were to cover that. Well, there's one in that corner, so we shouldn't ignore the extremities of our group here. You can stand up. You look like a guy with a loud voice. Come on.
Yes. I think you have a lot of experience.
So, I'm also a visitor here. I'm not a diplomatic Bangalore student. I'm Dr. Nambiar from EMC. The question is a sort of a follow-up of the first question, the gentleman from Schneider Electric, out here, the midlife crisis guy asked. Primarily at EMC, I'm part of the CTO office, and one of the things on my agenda, apart from a lot of other things, is to motivate the senior non-leadership team, so senior engineers, to start thinking about innovation. So these are people with 15, 16 years experience. Okay, and I have, so I come from IBM Research. I moved to EMC recently as part of midlife crisis. 7 years in IBM Research, just too much. So the question is, when I go into a room,
these people are reluctant to go back and educate themselves. Okay? And that's the reason we don't have quality architects. You cannot get quality architects out of a 4-year BTech program or a 2-year MTech program, because you need the experience in the market. Okay, and that comes when you actually deliver to the customer day in, day out. You listen to them, and listening is something. So the one point I have to make is our faculty are not training students to learn how to listen. Okay, I have 2 kids at IIIT, IIT Mumbai BTech, MTech, and IISc MTech, and they jump to first conclusions very, very easily. And they will argue vociferously against me who has 20 years of experience doing research, that whatever their idea was, that's the first idea they got is correct. They don't want to do research, they don't want to do the hard yards to figure out if somebody else has already solved the problem. And if so, the solution becomes harder for them to solve, but they don't want to do it then. If the simplest idea is what people want to do. Okay? So the question to you, sir, is how do I, when I get into a room with folks who have spent 15, 20 years in the same organization, without pushing their egos, without hurting their egos, tell them nicely that, look, enough is enough. You have to step up. You have to step up, go out, and start leading your business units. That's why you are there in a new type. They still want to be told what to do. This is why we don't have products. Okay? This is why we don't have products. Somebody will tell me, senior architect sits in the US, they will tell me what to do. They don't want to step up and take responsibility. How do you do that?
You know, it's very difficult to take a specific situation like yours. I have no idea what your team is and where they are coming from, what baggage they carry. Some of what is being being discussed in context of the fact that yes, there is a leadership team there. They understand the market better. That is why they actually know what they need to do. So it really goes back to market innovation. And one of the reasons why, in a sense, India didn't develop products earlier, apart from the fact that it was an evolution of the industry, was the fact I mentioned earlier, there wasn't a large enough market. So you're catering to a market there. You know, and I'll compare myself here with Ashok Narasimhan, for example, who's gone and done also his form of serial entrepreneurship, quite distinctly different from what I've been doing. And it's not that one is better than the other, they both achieve different types of needs, services. And in this particular case, I could say that the services entities have yielded much higher market values, but that's only a question of the teams that we happen to build and the opportunities in India. Now, you heard of July Systems. So it was actually started by Ashok together with the person who now is the entrepreneur, who's continuing to run it, because both of them did together, Rajshekhar Reddy. And so today, if we had to do an innovation-based product, Ashok is sitting in a market which is doing that day in, day out. And you're surrounded by it, you're surrounded by leading-edge customers whose needs you're trying to fulfill. That guy is going to know it. After he's thought of the idea, framed out what he thinks is the broad solution, he's going to come back here and explain to people. If he's also runs, let's say, or July Systems runs a team, obviously the team here is executing on the plan. As they go forward, how much do they learn to contribute towards that? And that's when I said it's important for all of us to understand the business. When you do that, notwithstanding the fact that you're not in that market, you'd still be able to understand the nuances of the customers. That's one angle. But the good thing is, I think all of that is changing. Today we're in an internet-linked economy where the latest things are available here. The market is becoming uniform. So we can as well be leading-edge consumers ourselves. And as we become that, we understand the market needs better. And through that process, particularly IT products, it may be different in, let's say, producing again the latest version of a compressor or something. But in an IT product, you can be a consumer yourself, a leading-edge consumer, and that is where the ideas will come from. And that is what will lead into innovation. So your question is in a way linked with this thing, the question on market innovation. There's another angle which I always rebel at, is how do I say to A, B or C people who don't seem to be doing the right thing, I think you need to get into a coaching environment versus saying there's an element of something's wrong with them, something's wrong with the students who come out today, something's wrong with my middle management, something's wrong with my team here who doesn't have the right mindset. I think one needs to work with them as a team You also talked about listening. I'd agree with you there. I think listening is a capability all of us need to develop much more. It's absolutely key. I didn't put it in, but then there's so many traits that all of us need to develop better and better. Okay. You want to take one last one because I noticed this, and then I'll wrap up and not stay on for the more informal this thing. Go ahead. I hate to turn somebody around if they. You have a question?
Yeah, I think I'll take.
But maybe we'll do because we never had a question from a lady, so I'll take this.
Yeah, I think he's. Hello, this is Sandeep. I am from the 2011 batch from IIIT-B. I was working with an e-commerce company for the last 2 years, and I have started on my own very recently. So my question is, like we have discussed, there's a huge talent crunch in the industry currently, and there's a lot of demand for good talent, and we as a startup are finding it very difficult to hire good people. And if you look at the competition, we have huge MNCs which can pay a lot of money and lure those professionals to work for them. So what's the solution for us, for companies like ours?
Sure. I'll tell you, the fact is that your problem of getting good talent is shared by the largest people down to the startup. So, and that's a great sign. I mean, it's wonderful that the right talent, people with the latest skills are in short supply. So even we have the problem. But I can tell you the easiest time was really when we were a startup, because then people have this fun of saying, let's get to the startup. So there are a large number of people who say, hey, we'd rather work in a small company for a start or be a part of building an entity. Like you said, you never worked in a place which has got more than 20 people. So there are people who are actually happier in that environment. And I look around all the time and I come across, say, small, specialized niche companies, and I'm amazed at the quality of the teams they built. So here's a guy who said, I'll set up a mobility company. And before I know it, in very little funds, in maybe 2.5 years' time, they built up a 250-person mobility company. Likewise in another area, or somebody who's got a truly entrepreneurial idea, obviously it's much easier doing it because you're exciting people with the idea. Then of course there are other elements. Important thing is to be able to get across to those people on creating a shared vision, getting a feeling saying that there is going to be wealth creation and we are all going to be a part of that process. So if you develop that inclusiveness, important to be able to get that reputation early. Get your first few people, build that reputation. There has to be a supply side, brand building also, but I appreciate that that's not easy. That's you have to be at a certain critical size in order to say we're going to invest in areas like that. Then there's also got to be forums in which you then do learn to leverage on. And there are a number of organizations today which are coming in, which are beginning to help entrepreneurs to, in a sense, either it may be a job fair equivalent, where they're floated and they're directed at your type of organization. So Silicon India, for example, does a program. I know of another entrepreneurial entity, I don't even remember his name now, but who started off with the specific aim of helping young, new entrepreneurs to, in a sense, fulfill some of these gaps. If you've got VC funded, the VCs, people talk to mentorship. The VCs themselves are wonderful mentors because they bring so much experience in, they'll bring in the angle, they'll push back at you in a way that teams won't push back at you. And they can help you even in terms of, locating the right talent at times. Then last but not the least person.
I'm Kalpana, I'm from the first batch, and I quit my corporate job about 2 years back to take the entrepreneurial route. And what I do today is I offer analytics learning programs.
Okay.
And my question to you is, actually this is something that helped me in my sales pitch to organizations. How do organizations build a culture of learning, continuous learning? I think a lot of challenges that people are talking about today in terms of innovation, in terms of productization,
they all go back to
because the learning and my speed to organization is to turn the learning around to the individual. Why should the learning be responsibility of a third party? Why is learning not the onus of the individual?
Sure.
So how do we build organizations that have the culture of continuous learning?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's certainly a good question to end on, and I think that's a really valid one in this business. And you're also right that a number of the questions that have come up, if in a sense we've done the right learning attitude, learning orientation, both in terms of opportunities and attitudes of people, I think those problems get resolved, and they really all go back to that. And listening is also, after all, one of the ways in which you learn, and if people don't listen enough, they're not going to learn. So I agree with you in another aspect where I say the onus on the individual is on the individual. So which is why, if you noticed in my talk today, well, the first point I actually had was continuous learning for yourselves. The onus is on the individual. Nobody owes it. It's your career. It's your life. So people have to do that. Organization may provide a framework to a certain extent. And even there, I'd say it's incredible now. You see, the opportunities for learning, thanks to the fact that so much information is available in the public domain, are available to the individual. Those who are truly learning oriented, I'm amazed at what they've been able to pick up, whether it's a completely new language, a new skill, a new type of technology, but it also, there are some things which just lend themselves to better structured programs, which has to be the onus and responsibility of an organization. They provide the framework. And presumably any good organization would make a sufficient investment in keeping its own people, therefore, exposed further upstream. And it has to be a mix then. There has to be a mix of technology, leadership training and management training, as well as cultural areas which build, in a sense, and strengthen, I'd say, a person's own value system and the organization's culture. Okay, good. That's a great way to be able to close. Thank you.
Wonderful. I request all of you to give a standing ovation to such a nice talk. And